The last objection to the substance view of human persons is the religion objection. You pro-lifers are imposing your religious views on us, and you are taking your personal beliefs and ramming them down our throat. And religious views don't have that kind of standing. They should not be in the public square because of it, and you're just imposing your views. You hear this all the time. You hear it in stem cell research, you hear it in abortion, you hear it on same-sex marriage, but especially on the pro-life issues. And I want to give you a few tactics for dealing with it, and then we're going to go home. Whenever you're in a discussion with someone who says to you, well, your view is just religious, I want you to ask two questions before you do anything else. Here are the two questions. They're in your notes. Have I mentioned the notes? I want you to ask the question, what do you mean by religion? Make them define what they mean. What do you think the answer will be?
Your beliefs.
Beliefs, what you're taught. They're going to tell you that religion is some metaphysical belief system that can't be proved by science, something like that. Something that is blind faith, involves metaphysics, it's irrational. Okay, fine. Then here's your next question. Why does anything have value and a right to life? They're telling you that your belief that the unborn are human is a religious view. You're going to ask, what do you mean by religion? And you're going to ask, why does anything have value and a right to life? What inevitably will their answer entail? Metaphysical view of their own. Exactly right. They're going to give you some metaphysical view of why embryos don't count, but you and I do. Or why apes count, and you and I don't. But what you're not going to get is a scientific answer that can be proven empirically. You're going to get some metaphysical view of how the universe works and our place in it. That's what you're going to get. And what I want you to see here is, we as pro-lifers should back away from the statement that I sometimes hear pro-lifers make, and I used to do this myself. When people say that our view is religious, we ought to say, you're right, it is. Ultimately, is our view religious? Yes, it is. We could say, well, what gives us value is we have a rational nature. So, why does that matter? Ultimately, we're going to get pushed back to the point that we have value and virtue of the kind of thing we are, and the kind of thing we are is a creature that bears the image of our Maker. We're going to end up there if we're pushed hard enough. And I think guys like Singer would be perfectly willing to push us that far. And Boonin too. Here's the thing though. Although our view is inherently religious at the end of the day, now that's not to say it can't be argued using science and philosophy, and they need to answer those arguments, but ultimately we do have a religious premise to our view. Okay? A foundation, let's say. Our view, however, is no more religious than alternative explanations for human value. Everybody is asking the same exact question, what makes humans valuable in the first place? We're all asking that question. So for example, let me prove this. Here's the abortion choice view. Embryos do not have a right to life because they're not self-aware. Here's the pro-life view. Embryos do have a right to life because although they're not self-aware, they are valuable in virtue of the kind of thing they are, and they have a human nature that they've had from the beginning. All right? What is true of both those statements? What are they both doing? Making what kind of claims? Metaphysical claims about what gives us value. If the pro-life view can be disqualified from the public square because it does metaphysics, guess what other view can be disqualified for that reason? Everybody's asking the same question. What makes us valuable in the first place? This is something Frank Beckwith has done wonderful work on, showing that everybody's doing metaphysics in this debate. In fact, in his book, Defending Life, he goes into this in great detail. And it's an excellent way to see that everybody is doing religion. But I think we also ought to ask people if a secular worldview can tell us why anything has value and a right to life. Let's think about the materialistic worldview here. The universe came from nothing and was caused by nothing. What are human beings in that equation? Cosmic accidents, right? How do you get intrinsically valuable human beings in that kind of equation? What happens is, as Paul Copan points out, Paul Copan writes that secularists simply presuppose human dignity and human rights and moral obligations, but their system really doesn't allow for it. They just presuppose it. He's written a great article, by the way, called "Can Michael Martin Be a Moral Realist?" Michael Martin being an atheist philosopher, and it's in Philosophia Christi, I think, and it's online at paulcopan.com. You may want to get that article. And what Copan points out is, sure, Martin can recognize human value, but he can't ground it any more than he can ground objective morals. He can recognize them epistemically, but can't ground them ontologically. Can secularism tell us why anything has value and a right to life? I don't think so. It simply presupposes human dignity, and as a result, I think it even struggles to explain rationality. And we were talking about this during the break. Alan showed me a portion of Stephen Hawking's new book. You may have heard about it. Hawking argues everything's predetermined. The genes drive everything. And as a result, we really don't have free will, do we? I mean, if everything's programmed into us, my thoughts, my impulses are what? Just chemical, physical processes, and I'm really not free to think about anything other than what I've been predetermined to think about, right? Which, by the way, if that's true, why is he writing a book to convince us that we're wrong, right? But rationality is hard to account for in a world that sprang from blind, irrational forces. There again, they just presuppose it. Last thing I want to say, and then we're going to wrap up tonight. Why should any of us suppose that religious truth claims don't count as real knowledge? The secular view of faith is that it's an irrational leap in the dark. But that's not the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview is that we are not believing in belief. We are believing because we have trust based on evidence. We don't have certainty. Brian McLaren, Tony Jones, and all the other emerging guys can sit there and say, we don't have bomb-proof certainty. You Christians are too cocky and arrogant in your confidence. You're right, we don't have bomb-proof certainty. I don't have bomb-proof certainty about many things, to be honest. Most of the things I believe, I do not have bomb-proof certainty for. Can I prove at this exact moment, with all certainty, that my wife is not in Las Vegas with Michael Jackson? You say, well, Michael Jackson's dead. You don't know that for certain. You know what the media told you. You don't know that. He could be a roommate of Elvis, right? You do not know that for certain. I do not know for certain that my wife is not in Vegas. Well, you could call her on her cell phone. Yeah, but she could be anywhere. But do I have good reason to believe she's in Las Vegas? No, I don't. It is more plausible and rational for me to believe she's at home in Atlanta, sound asleep right now, and I will see her in about 48 hours. Well, a little more than that. That's what I have rational foundation for believing, even though I don't have certainty. The Christian belief in faith is not irrational because we don't have certainty. Our faith is not blind, it's not a leap in the dark. So even if they say our pro-life view is inherently religious, they've not refuted our scientific and philosophic arguments, and they also haven't proven that religious views shouldn't count as real knowledge. They need to argue that religious views don't count as real knowledge. I like the way that Fieser puts it. He says, look, existence or debates about the existence of God are no different in kind than any other philosophic debate that we have a serious discussion about. You know, so why do we demand that religious believers be exempt from the public square and that we have to somehow separate religion and politics, not just in the sense of there shouldn't be a state church, but in the even stronger sense that religious views, however rationally supported they might be, get no place in the public hearing. And what he says is, what Fieser says is, look, we don't call for the state to separate itself from feminist metaphysics. Nobody argues we got to separate materialism and its metaphysic from the political arena. But boy, Christianity and anything on the standard faith level gets thrown out, and that's just not fair. And I say more about that in the notes, and we are going to wrap up. So I'll take 4 minutes to take questions, and then we're going to end.
How do you talk to a layperson and get them to understand that their metaphysical view is a religious view, even though...
How do you get lay people to understand that their metaphysical view is at some level religious? I think Tim Keller does a real good job of unpacking this in his book, The Reason for God. And what Keller says is that a religion doesn't have to be organized to count as a religious view. Any metaphysical overarching view about the nature of the universe, our place in it, what we ought and ought not doing, is a religious view. Now, that doesn't mean all religious views are equally valid, of course not. But they're doing what amounts to religious thinking, asking the ultimate questions about life. And we can't help but do that. We can't help but do that. And I think Tim Keller's book, The Reason for God, will give you some real good ways. I talk about it in my book, but I think Keller goes into it in more detail because that's what his book's about. I just have a little section on it, but he really does a nice job on that. I think that's the standard answer is a religion doesn't have to be organized to count as religious. Anytime you're asking these ultimate questions, you're doing something that can't be proven empirically. Good question. Any others? Oh, you want to know where the notes are. All right, here you go. Get ready. By the way, if you fail to come to class tomorrow because you think I'm just going to read the notes, you're going to lose your salvation. And that's pretty dramatic coming from a Calvinist. All right. ProLifeTraining.com, all one word. ProLifeTraining.com. ProLifeTraining.com. It's on the sled cards you took, I think. Is the website on there, ProLifeTraining.com? Yes, it is. ProLifeTraining.com. At the top of the website, you'll see some tabs. Click on the one that says Resources, and a drop-down menu will appear. Click on the one that says Pro-Life Articles. ProLifeTraining.com, Resources, Pro-Life Articles. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. You'll see a whole series of my brilliantly written 5-minute pro-life articles. At the very bottom of the page, you'll see a link that says Advanced Pro-Life Apologetics, Biola. I think it says Biola MA Bioethics course or something like that. Let me see if I got the exact wording. I think that's it. I'm almost certain that's it. Yeah, Biola.
University MA course in bioethics.
There you go. He's got it. What I suggest you do is download the file, right-click on the link, save, target as, and download it to your desktop. It'll read better than if you read it in the browser. It just gives you more space to look at it. It's about 58 pages. You can print it out, which is the best way to do it. I suggest you take it to Staples or Office Depot and print it out on 25-pound paper. And put it in hole punch if you want and stick it in some kind of binder. That's one way to do it. Or if you want to just read it on your computer, I don't care. But if you want to mark it up, it's there. And the notes are thorough. Everything you heard me say tonight is in there, I promise you. Okay? All right, any other questions? You guys have been awesome. Thank you for being so attentive, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we talk about end-of-life issues and bodily rights and the other two tasks we need to do to be effective pro-life apologists.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.